Well, welcome everybody. I hope you can hear me. And as I said, if you can't hear me or you can't see my screen, please chat out to Daniel and he will help you out. My name is Jeff Adams and I'm the Digital Solutions Director for Pearson Canada's K-12 group in Canada, and I'm based out of Don Mills. Daniel Coe, who is our Director of Marketing, is also part of the webinar. He's the one moderating and facilitating and taking a look at your questions to pass along to me. So just wanted to start with a bit of an overview of what Mathology is. So Mathology is a set of K-8 print and digital resources based on academic research and best practices. It's a combination of a bunch of components that we have built. There's professional learning books, as well as a Pearson learning progression that we've built with researchers across the country that underpins all of the Mathology components that you see on the screen. There's activity boxes, little books, the digital solution called Mathology.ca, and the professional learning resources. So it's to help know where your students are and define growth for next steps for growth, helped engagement at all levels, install love and joy, and it also has a French component, Mathology, as well. So everything that's available in the English version is also available in the French version. And I'll show you what that looks like in the digital version as we go through. So what we're going to look at today is the digital component of Mathology, which we call Mathology.ca. And Mathology.ca was built to sort of combine all of those pieces that I just showed you, the math little books, the student and teacher activity cards, the professional learning resources, and put them in a tool that also provided some additional coordination of the materials and some other tools that help when you're teaching and planning. So the journey that teachers take looks like what you're seeing on the screen. There's some long-term and short-term planning that begins everything. There's preparation and teaching in the classroom with activities or resources. There's assessment of the work that you've been doing in the classroom to see where your kids are going and how they're doing. And also some reporting, the ability to track where your students are actually going and how well they're doing, and hopefully resources to help when they're struggling. And lastly, professional learning, which is the piece for teachers that helps them understand and gives them some advice and some guidance on how to do some of the activities that are included in Mathology.ca. So Mathology.ca, as I said, is a group of several components. There's the Mathology Kits. These are a box of activity cards, laminated activity cards, for both teachers and students. Sorry, Daniel's just saying that the slides are not moving. So I don't know if anybody else is having that issue. Maybe you guys aren't seeing my slides moving. Maybe you could drop Daniel a note if you're able to see the slides moving, because they're moving on my screen. So as we go through, I just basically there's the activity kits, as I said, with the laminated cards, the activity cards, which I'll show you in Mathology.ca as we go into the demo. There's a selection of, oh, hold on, I'm just going to try and maybe reshare here and see if that solves the problem. Yeah, I've loaded it back up. Is that working for everybody now? Okay. Sorry about this, folks. I don't know why we're having this problem with the slides not showing up. Give me 1 second. I'm going to try and reload the PowerPoint here. There seems to be some issue with it. Okay, guys, can you see my slides moving now? Okay, just give me 1 sec. Sorry about this, everybody. Okay, Daniel says it's working now, so there's something corrupt with that other PowerPoint. Sorry about that. So I'll just go back to a quick step. As I was talking about the math journey, so the Mathology.ca was to sort of build to help sort of the journey that math teachers take along the way. So provide some tools and content for short-term and long-term planning, teaching activities in the classroom, assessing those activities, being able to capture some of the work that's done during those activities, and some pieces of professional learning for teachers that they can use to assist them in delivering these lessons to the kids. Mathology.ca, as I said, is a group of components that work together. Mathology.ca being one part of it. It is the full digital part of Mathology. So the Pearson Learning Progression, which is that research-based developmental progression that underpins all of the Mathology products, is also in Mathology.ca. The math little books, which are physical math readers and activity guides, are available in Mathology.ca, but they're also available as printed little books that can be ordered. And the last part is the activity kit for the classroom, which is, again, a box full of laminated teacher and student cards with activities and consolidation information and assessment tools that come in the box as well. And Mathology.ca is all of these pieces integrated together. So in Mathology.ca, it's kind of built around 5 key sort of paths or components. So it's aligned to Canadian curricula. So whichever province you're coming in from, your curriculum will be available for you as you go through Mathology.ca. It's pedagogically sound, and it's all based on rich math activities and pedagogical supports. The tool itself, Mathology.ca, is basically sort of 5 things. It helps you search to find activities or little books that you can use in your class. It helps you plan and organize those activities, math little books, or what we call non-Mathology resources that you want to add to your plan. There's rich activities that help you teach the math in your classroom, as well as on the back of those activity cards, there's the ability to assess and track how your students are doing. And lastly, in each of the activities, there's some professional learning elements that are built in currently, and we will be adding to year after year as the product continues to grow. Okay, so we're going to jump into Mathology.ca and just take a quick tour. If you do have any questions, please chat them to Daniel, and Daniel will forward them to me on my cell phone, and I can answer them as we go through. So this is what Mathology looks like, Mathology.ca. I'm going to start right from the login process. So basically, as I said, as you log in with Mathology.ca, we will get you to register so we know your province. There's several ways to log in or register with Mathology.ca. Anyone can register for a 45-day trial by just clicking the register button and providing some information about your school district and your first name, last name, username, password information, and you can immediately start a 45-day trial with Mathology at any time you wish. You can also log in using and register with your Google account. So if you're a Google district or a Microsoft district and you're already signed in to Google or Microsoft, if you click the Google link or the Microsoft link, it will single sign you on to Mathology.ca after you register if you haven't already registered. And you'll be able to also get a 45-day trial that way. So I'm going to log in as an Ontario user just to give you the demo. I don't, somebody just asked a question, Allison, about the kindergarten kit. I don't have a date on the kindergarten kit right now. Allison, the grade 2 kit is out, grade 1 kit is out, and the grade 1 French kit is out, and grade 1 English, 2 English, and 1 French will all be available in Mathology.ca at the end of August. And I will find out more information about when the kindergarten stuff might be released. The kindergarten math little books are available in Mathology.ca, as are the grade 1 currently, and the grade 2 will be available shortly. So Mathology, when you sign into Mathology, you start at this search screen. And you have several options here to find content and lessons and math little books. You can just do a quick keyword search, counting, subitizing, shapes, triangles, whatever it is, and click search or enter. And it will find all of the lessons in Mathology.ca that match your search. And you can peruse them and choose which one you're looking to do in your classroom. You can also search by the curriculum. So I've signed in as an Ontario user. So if I click that, the Ontario curriculum will show up with all the strands and all the overall and specific expectations. And if you signed in from Alberta or British Columbia, you would see your specific provincial curriculum. And you can search for material this way. So if you're doing something about anchors of 5 and 10, you can click that and you can see the math little books and the activities that go along and cover off that part of your curriculum. The last part is that learning progression that I mentioned at the beginning. So the developmental learning progression is also a way to search. So if you know approximately where your student is, you can find the developmental box that student, you think that student is sort of working in currently, and you can search for resources that way, or you can search for where they might be going next or where they potentially came from and find resources that work for that. So those are 3 ways to search and find activities or math little books. The other option is planning. So we actually have a plan tool that is built for teachers that helps them do a couple things. First, we provide some basically pre-developed plans for your whole school year that allow you to open them up. There's 3 options. I'm just going to pick option 1. And we've basically laid out a path for you guys, or a plan that you can follow in your classroom, and gives you a list of all of the just one sec here. Sorry, I think I was in Alicia's plan. I meant to be in this plan. So here's the demo plans at the bottom, the plans that come with Mathology. So there's some sample plans that provide sort of a scope and sequence that you can use during your year, which basically references all of the contents, math little books, and activities that are available in Mathology.ca, and you can choose which ones you want to use, which ones you don't want to use, and it's a preset plan, of which there's 3 options you can try. You can also take any of those sample plans that we've created and make your own plan out of them. So you can use those sample plans as templates, or you can create your own plan from scratch. And I'll just jump into Leanne's plan. And you can make a plan which looks like any sort of folders on the left-hand side that you want to create. Those could be months, they could be strands, they could be special events, they could be things you want to do inquiry-wise, anything you want, any way you want to organize the material that's in Mathology.ca, you can sort of build in your plan. And it's just a simple drag and drop. If you want this thing to be in your plan, you click it, you drop it, and it shows up in your plan. You can move it into a different position. You can move it into a different folder. You can make notes about what you want to do with this activity in the class, or things you want to remember, or things you need to bring. There's some other features that go along with the planning tool, so that they're in the section up here. So as you build your own plan, there's a curriculum coverage feature that will actually show you specifically all of the pieces that are in your plan and which parts of the curriculum they cover. And if there's parts that are not covered, I'll just show what that looks like. It'll tell you, well, I've got 13 items for this part of the curriculum already in my plan. And if there's some that are not green and have 0, you could just click on the magnifying glass and find things to add to your plan. So you make sure you're covering off all the curriculum you want to cover off for that year. The other options are a material list. So once I've got my plan, and this is, by the way, a yearly plan, so it has a lot of information, but it will list for me all of the physical materials I'm going to need to get to deliver on the plan for my year or my month or my special event or my strand. So it includes the physical materials like blocks and cubes and pipe cleaners and all the physical and manipulatives you'll need, as well as all of the student cards that go along with the lessons that you've chosen. And there's a whole huge list because this is a huge plan. I'll actually pop out and show you a simpler plan here. So there's a simpler plan with just a few items. And there's the material list. So for this particular plan for Alicia, I'm going to need game pieces, cubes, and student card 3. And here's the line masters I'm going to need as well as I'm doing these activities. I can also share my plan. So any member of my license, which could be licensed at a school district level or a school level, if there's 3 teachers in a school who all belong to the same license or subscription, then those 3 teachers will show up here and you can share your plan with any of those 3 teachers. If it was a district, you'd have access to all of the people who've registered in your district to share your plans with. And when they log in as teacher, at the very bottom is a section for shared plans. So any plans that you share will show up in their planning section in that section. And as a teacher, you can open those plans and follow what you've done, what that other person's done. It's a really good way of sort of co-planning in the summer and creating one plan, adding your resources, and then being able to share the plan and the resource list with everybody else. There's also an ability to print your plan if you need to send it to another teacher or give it to your principal for review. So that's several ways of sort of finding stuff in Mathology.ca. So getting a way into the lessons and the math little books. So I'm just going to go and show you what a lesson looks like now. So I'm going to do one of the ones that's pinned to my start screen here. So skip counting. And all of the lessons in math little books fall into a very similar template. They have an about section, a details section, an assessment component, and related resources. The about section is basically information about the lesson that gives you a way of sort of quickly previewing if this is something that's suitable for your class for that day or for sometime in the future. It gives you some information about how long it's going to take, what the group activity type is. Is it pairs? Is it individual? It has some content background. So it tells you about prior experience. The teachers or the kids may benefit from having prior experience with that background. And most importantly, it connects the activity to your curriculum. So as you'll notice, we signed on as an Ontario teacher. I now see the specific, the overall and specific expectations that this particular activity was designed for and covers. And if you're a BC teacher or an Alberta teacher, you would see the specific outcomes from your curriculum in this section. We also show the competencies. If you get Mathology.ca, do you still need to buy the kits? No, you don't. You can buy Mathology.ca on its own. You can buy any of the components on their own or any of them together. We also include the processes and competencies for each province, so that will again be reflected by what province you're from. And then lastly in this section is where this particular activity or lesson sits in our Pearson's learning progression. So for example, this particular activity, it's sort of targeted to this part of the learning progression. But you can also use this to look and see, where your students are at. If they're not quite here yet, maybe they're here, or maybe they're actually back here a little further. So you can get an idea of where the kids came from, the sort of prerequisites in that that developmental path. You can also see where they're going. So after they've learned how to skip count by factors of 10, what's the next developmental thing that they will be working on? And this particular one has 2 connections to the learning progression because the assessment has 2 different assessments attached to it. Okay. The details section is the digital version of those physical activity cards I was talking about that are in the box. So Marilyn, your question about do you have to buy the kits, you don't, because all of those cards that are in the box are all in Mathology.ca in a digital version, an accessible version. So you see the digital version of the card, materials section, links directly to the required, or not required, but the worksheets and assessment masters that go along with this lesson are linked right here, so you don't have to go find them, they're all connected. It has the same components as the physical lessons cards, which are an instruction section, a consolidation section, a what to look for section, so you can actually look to see how the kids are doing as you're delivering the lesson. Some probing questions you can ask the students to engage in some communication to find out what they seem to know and where they might be struggling. Gives you an idea of sort of where they're at. All of the physical images of the cards, so these are the actual physical cards that you would get if you bought the box, are attached to the lesson, so you can print them off or project them. And that's the teacher card front. That's the teacher card back, which is where some of your behaviors and strategies for assessment can be reviewed. And I'll show you where this actually fits into Mathology.ca in the assessment section. And then we also have the student cards that go along with this activity. Again, you can print them or project them. And sometimes they have more than one, so there's a couple for this one. And any of the sort of multi-use cards as well that might be applicable for this particular activity. We've also included some activity cards that are sort of in use. So this is what it kind of looks like when it's being used in a classroom. This is sort of what it looks like when a teacher's had a student actually working on one of the cards. Okay. As well, we have some interactives. So if there are Pearson interactive tools like our 100 chart tool that have applicability to the lesson that you guys are using, then you can actually use these charts, and there's some tools use these tools and work on skip counting or some of the other features that are available. So you can start from 2 and count by 2 and keep skip counting. And you can use this in front of the class and have kids come up and use it on a smartboard. You can project it, but the tools are always available at the bottom of every activity in the details section. So whatever tools we built to support this particular activity are available in the section at the bottom. And last is professional learning. So as I mentioned, we've tied professional learning into Mathology.ca as well. So for every activity, there is a learning highlights video. And this video is really designed to sort of bring these cards and bring these activities to life for you as a teacher in the classroom. So I'm going to try and play one. I hope you can see it and I hope you can hear it, but we'll see. But I think you'll get the gist of what I'm talking about. So we'll give it a shot here.
When we skip count, we organize objects into smaller groups of equal size and count by the number of objects in each group. For example, there are 2 cubes in each group, so we skip count by 2s. 2, 4, 6. Or there are 5 cubes in each group, so we skip count by 5s. 5, 10, 15. No matter what number we skip count by, the last number said represents the total number of acorns. Do your students realize that no matter how the 50 cubes are counted, the quantity stays the same? Or how the fewer cubes in each group, the more groups there are? During consolidation, discuss how skip counting may help students both at school and at home.
Okay, so there's one of those for every one of the activity cards in the system. And in the future, there's going to be some additional videos added at sort of a more unit-based level or big idea-based level that will provide some professional development for bigger things, sort of less practical to do with the activity. So maybe supervising or things that can sort of help teachers with the math itself. Okay, so that's the details section. I'm going to skip over assessment for a session and go to related lessons. So related lessons are all the other things that go along with this lesson or activity that might be helpful for you as a teacher. So there's mini lessons, which are broken down into on-grade, intervention, and extension. I'll come back to what those mean in a second. But basically, it's, you know, if the students are not sort of, if they're working at the beginning of the developmental stage, there's intervention activities available for them. If they're kind of on grade and you want them to be able to do something on grade in class or do some practice, there's on grade mini lessons available. And lastly, if there's students who are actually already sort of fully developed the skill that we're looking at in this activity, there's some additional extension for those kids. There's also the possible misconceptions. So, you know, when skip counting students sees the numbers as labels rather than quantities, it's a possible or common misconception that students might have, and what it is you could do about it in class when you see it. There's additional items for things you can do in class, some other ideas of what you could do in class, some other ideas of what kids might be able to do with their parents at home that you can print out and send home with the kids. There is a word wall, so sort of your math vocabulary wall. And then at the bottom are the related lessons. So all of the other sort of counting lessons and math little books will be available in here. So if you want to find a math little book that goes along with this lesson, you can just go into this section, click on the math little book or a different lesson, and it will pop up on the screen and you can take a look at that. The goal is as Mathology gets complete from sort of kindergarten to grade 3 and 4, we'll actually include lessons slightly above grade and slightly below grade. So teachers who purchase grade 1 or grade 2, or if they're a split grade 1 and grade 2 classroom, will also have some kindergarten and grade 3 materials available so that they can cover off the abilities and skill levels of the kids in their class. Okay, so I'm going to go back to assessment because I skipped that. So our assessment system is based, if you remember, on the back of that activity card. So it's a very simple but very powerful drag and drop assessment. So basically what we provide is what behaviors teachers might see as they deliver this lesson in the class. So they might see some students that don't associate the skip counting number with a quantity. And if they do, they can just drop the student they see into that box. And they may have seen Jeff exhibit that behavior a week ago, but we've done another activity and actually he's moved up a bit. I see his behavior is sort of somewhat different this time than I did last time. And for all of these things, you can just drag and drop your kids into the box that represents the behavior you're seeing in your classroom. And what this does is it's keeping track of the curriculum connections that this activity covers. It's also keeping track of where the students are on the learning progression for this activity based on which box you put them in. And I'll show you where that data comes out in a second. Also here is a sort of powerful feature about what to do next. So, okay, I see that Ioana and Bev are not associating the skip counting quantity with a number. So what do I do for Bev and Ioana at this point? So I can click the next step button and it will give me some suggestions to do in the moment, something I can give to Ioana and Bev and that they can do to try and move up to the next box and try and master, try and exhibit a behavior that they're not currently exhibiting. And they're different for each section. So because this developmental sort of progression goes from top left to bottom right, as you go up, the next steps are slightly different because they're related to the box that the students are in. And some boxes will have connections to those mini lessons. So it's not just a suggestion, there's also a specific intervention mini lesson that you can give the kids that are in this section to help them. And it's the same for all the boxes. So every box has sort of an in the moment and sometimes an additional connection to a next step. And you can see as we go from top left to bottom right, you're going from sort of intervention to extension in terms of the additional next steps. Okay, I'm going to take a just break for 10 seconds and just see if anyone has any questions before I go on. See Daniel typing, so maybe there's some questions there. I just want to, nothing yet. Okay, great. So I'm going to move on to the analytics section. So remember all of these kids that we've dropped in all of these boxes, Well, in the analytics section is where you see the sort of data that's collected as you're dropping those students in those boxes for those activities. So here's Miss Christine's class, and she's done a whole, this is the activity view. So I'm looking at all the activities I've done assessments for, a whole ton of them. I can see where the distribution of my students was. So most of them were sort of had a bunch at the beginning to develop stage and kind of a bunch in the middle. And that's why it's orange, because it's sort of in the middle. This one, most of my kids are, you know, on the bottom right-hand side of it, so that's green. And I can get a quick idea of, from a classroom point of view, of just sort of where my kids are that I've assessed as I've gone through these lessons. So this one needs attention because all of my kids so far that I've assessed are in the low end of the scale. Anytime you see this, you can click View. You can go right back to the assessment that you did, and you can do any of the next steps if you want. You can move students around. If you think that Mark actually has improved since the last time you did this, you can move Mark to a new box or move Taylor back to a new box. You can make comments about Mark or Bertha or Taylor specifically to do with this particular activity as an assessment. So I'm just going to put something simple. Okay. And if I go into the student view instead of the classroom view, I can see the same data for the lessons that I've done for Amir. I can see which box Amir has been in as he's been doing his supervising or spatial reasoning lesson. And again, I still see the attention, the sort of green, red, yellow scale that tells me sort of what's happening for each of my students in each of my lessons. And for these, again, I can click. I can see specifically what the behavior was that I'd witnessed during that assessment. If I had made any comments about Amir, they would show up in this particular box here. And if I wanted to, I could click View Activity Assessment and go back to the activity and again, make some additional notes about Amir or move Amir to a different box because I've seen, I've done some other stuff in class that I witnessed, you know, his behavior is actually in a different place now. For both class and student, there's 3 views of the data. You can look at the activities, or you can look at your curriculum to see which parts of your curriculum that you've assessed Amir for. So you can see the overall expectations, or if you go to the advanced view, you can see the detailed expectations in Ontario or outcomes in Alberta. And you can see specifically which activities connect with which part of the curriculum and how your students are doing at that point. The last view is the progression view. So as well, I can see where Amir is being placed on the learning progression as we're working through the lessons. So right now for this particular thread, Applying Principles of Counting, this is where Amir has been placed based on which box I dropped Amir into during the assessment for the lesson that's attached to this part of the curriculum. And I can click on that and get right to the assessment, what it was about, and get the details. You can export this to Word, you can export it to PDF and print for the students. Okay, just gonna go back home, navigate to the top. By the way, anything you do, whether it be planning or any of the tools, your work is automatically saved. You don't have to save anything. Everything you do is saved as you do it. There is a favorite section. So as you're going through your lessons, anything you would like to keep as a favorite to find quickly or use later, you can just heart and it will show up in your favorite section. And in your favorite section, you'll also notice that, or in your homepage, you'll notice that we've got a place where you can pin for fast access or stuff you use often. You can pin items to your start screen. So I'm just going to unpin one. I'm going to go into my favorite section. And I've got 2 pinned lessons. I've got 1 space available. I've got all my favorite lessons here. And I'm going to pin that one to my start screen because that's something I'm going to be doing next week. And then when I go back to my home screen, I've got that lesson pinned to my home screen so I can get to it quickly. The other thing in favorites you can do is create a non-mathology lesson. So we basically allow you to create basically a lesson with a title. So if you actually have some activities you do that you want to include in your plan and include in Mathology.ca, you can create a lesson with a title, a description. So, you know, we go out in the parking lot and we count all the red cars and we count all the white cars. And then if it was something else, if it was a link to a video from the ministry website or something on the internet or some document you have at your school district that you wanted to link, you could create a link to that document so long as it's a URL. So if it's a public facing website, if it's a Google Drive link, any basic internet link you can create and just put them in here. And then when you go to that activity, you can pin this activity to your front screen if that's something you're going to use a lot. I'm just going to go up here and unpin something. Pin this one to my front screen. And then when I go here, when I click on it, it's going to take me to the link, which I misspelled. So it should go to www.pearson.ca. But as I said before, as long as that's a publicly facing website that you can access, that can take you to your ministry website, your board website, can take you to a video from another teacher, or it could take you to a Google Doc or an Office 365 doc that you have available to you as well. I'm going to show you one last thing. I think we have a little bit of time, just briefly, and then show you the Math Little Books. So we also include all of the Math Little Books in Mathology.ca, but only a limited part of the teacher's material. So when you go into the Math Little Book, you'll see very similar template about details and resources. There's no assessment for the Math Little Books. You'll see the book itself and some details on what it covers. Because these are books, you'll see the reading level that this book was aimed at. You'll see the focus of the math. Again, you'll see links to your curriculum, in Ontario or in whichever province you're teaching from. You'll see your process and competencies, and again, you'll see the connections to the learning process. In the details section, you won't see an activity card, but you'll see the title of the book. And in here, you'll have some information about what this little book is about. You'll have a bit of information on how to introduce the book in your class. There are links to the teacher's guide, but they have to be purchased separately. They're in a different system currently. That's hopefully going to change soon. Then there's similar related resources to the Math Little Books. So there's things you can do after the reading. There's all of the line masters, again, connected directly right here that go along with this particular little book. There's the additional related lessons or other Math Little Books, Mathology Little Books that go along with this particular activity that you can choose from. And lastly, when you're back on the details page, you can link directly to the student versions of the Math Little Books. They're all included for K-1 in the K-1 release, and will be for K-2 in the K-2 release. And these Math Little Books are all HTML5 based Math Little Books, which you can read and listen. So there's audio support, there's activities, and they're available. They come with all of the student editions of the Math Little Books for the grade, as I said, grade K-1s currently are included. You can just scroll through the books. And again, there's audio support at the bottom. I'm not going to click it, but it's available. Okay, so I think that's pretty much what I wanted to cover. I did want to show you, just for information, our grade 2 content is almost fully developed. So this is an example of what the grade 2 content is going to look like. Very similar to grade 1. There's just a couple of different options that are, there's different cards. So there's, for Mathology grade 1, there's lesson cards, Math Little Books, and consolidation cards. For grade 2, there'll be an additional math everyday card, which is sort of a quick card you can do 10 minutes. And there'll be an intervention card specifically targeted to help with intervention in grade 2. But otherwise, the template's similar. The About section, curriculum connections, assessment, same type of assessment, same type of related resources. And lastly, the French version. So as I mentioned, the grade 1 French version should be out for Back to School 2019. And it is a complete French version. All the content's French and the interface is French. And it looks, again, very similar. Has similar structure, just all of the content and all the interface is done in French. You actually can, as a teacher, choose to switch your interface to English, but all of the content, curriculum, and learning progression will remain in French. But that's your choice if you'd rather have the the interface in English and the content in French. It's up to the user. Okay. So I am now going to just stop and see if there's any questions. If you can give me a sec to see if Daniel's got any questions. So this is from Marilyn. When you log into your account and lessons, can you see all lessons created by others, or do they have to be shared somehow? Well, when you create your own Mathology, non-Mathology lessons, they are just your lessons. So if you put those lessons, so for the lessons themselves that you create, the non-Mathology lessons, they're just yours. They always stay just with you. If you create a plan where you've organized your lessons into a sort of a scope and sequence that you think is really useful or another teacher really likes, you can share that scope and sequence and the content, those lessons that are in that plan with other teachers, but not the stuff you've created yourself, just the stuff that already comes with Mathology that you've organized. Is there a clear projected date for grade 2 completion? Grade 2 English will be ready again for Back to School 2019. So I showed you one example. It's actually fairly complete. I just wanted to show you it won't be actually released until Back to School 2019. And that will be in Mathology.ca. The physical cards for grade 2 are already available. From Gail, grade 3 release date. I don't have that a firm date, but I think the goal is for Back to School 2020, Gail. What percentage of the Ontario curriculum is covered by Mathology? So the one we're demoing today, the grade 1 version, it's 100%. So it covers all of the grade 1 expectations for Ontario. Is there a place in the program to explore this for each grade? I'm not sure exactly what that means, but in terms of I'll try and show you, Allison, just to see if I can answer your question. So there's sort of 2 places you can see. So if you go into a plan that we've created for you, again, I'm signed in as an Ontario teacher. So all of our plans cover all of the curriculum. So they cover 100%. If you take a plan, just trying to see if I can find something that might do it for you here. If you, the way to check it or check your own plan is if you go into your plan and you start creating plans based on our plan. So let's take one of our plans here. Create a new plan, start using the existing plan. I'm going to take one of our sample long-range plans and call it All Ontario. Okay, and so once I have the plan for myself, once I've created it for myself, I can do the curriculum coverage check just to ensure that all of the pieces are covered through my curriculum and how many. And you can do it using this tool. Okay, and strand by strand, outcome by outcome. So I hope that answers the question. That's the way you can check to see what your curriculum coverage is. And at the moment, it's only grade 1, so that's all that's available. When you do have a split class, if you have a split class where you would have both grade 1 and grade 2 content available to you, you'd be able to check it by grade. I hope that makes sense. How much is each grade level online? Well, the cost for a subscription to Mathology.ca for 1 year is $140. And the plan is once we get the content for K1, 2, 3, 4, if you had a split grade class, we would give you content for whatever grades that you teach. So it would be the same price, but you would get the content you need to teach the kids in your class. So if that's a split grade of 2, 3, you'd get 2, 3 when they're all available. Okay, I'm just going to switch out of here unless anyone has any questions and go back to the PowerPoint. So we just bring the PowerPoint up because Daniel mentioned that there is a slide on price here. Hopefully we're not back into the you can't see my slides move section. There we go. So again, this is just some content about what's actually in each grade level for Mathology and Mathology. So for grade 1, there's 101 lessons, 34 math little books, the learning progression that's built into Mathology.ca, and the 100+ professional learning videos. And what will be available in grade 2. So there'll be 185 lessons, 38 math little books, the same K3 learning progression plus an additional 160 professional learning videos. There's the pricing information. So 1 year subscription per teacher is $140. 5-year subscription per teacher is $665. And as I mentioned, as we get the content built into Mathology.ca, there will be a way for split grade teachers to get the content they need at that price. And then there's bundle pricing if you choose to purchase the kits or the math little books or along with Mathology.ca. Okay. As I mentioned at the beginning, if you want to start a free 45-day trial with Mathology.ca, you can just go to etr.mathology.ca, click the register button. As I said, it'll ask you for some information, first name, last name, school, district, school. Nope, there's no cost, doesn't ask for a credit card or anything like that. And as soon as you complete the registration, you'll get an email with a key to activate your account, and you can start right away. If you do run into any trouble, help@mathology.ca. We respond to that really quickly. So if you have any issues or even any questions at all, just send us an email at that address. And if you know anyone else would like to attend this webinar, there are more sessions available. Maybe Daniel can pass out or suggest the dates if somebody wants to pass along that information. There are more sessions available here. So there's a list of the dates that are still available and the times. Just leave that up for a few seconds while people take a peek. Is there an opportunity to do online PD with teachers once the subscriptions are purchased? Marilyn, if you mean online in the sense of sort of walking them through how to use Mathology.ca, we can certainly arrange that. There are professional development options available to go along with Mathology.ca for implementation. I would have to get somebody else to get back to you with the price and the scope of what that does, but we're always happy to help get teachers started if that's what you need. From Stacy, so to confirm, if I'm teaching grade 1, 2 in September, I shouldn't sign up for the free trial until grade 2 is released in the fall. Yes, I would agree with that, Stacy. Although you could sign up now because the grade 1 content is there and the grade 2 content would just show up in September. And if you let us know, we could just extend your trial for another 45 days in September so you can try it out. Okay. So lastly, this is just the contact information for some of our account executives across the country. So if you have any questions about ordering or any other information you need about professional learning sessions or math events that we're doing coming up, these are the contacts across the country in Ontario and out west. And I'll leave that screen up there and just see if anybody else has any questions before we go. And I do apologize for the PowerPoint issues at the beginning. Hopefully that won't happen again. And again, if anybody has any questions after this that they wanted to ask after we're done, help@mathology.ca, just send them there and we'll be happy to respond. Okay. So I don't see any more questions coming from Daniel right now. So if we're all done, then thank you so much for sort of spending your evening learning about Mathology. And if you have any questions, help@mathology.ca or contact any of the people on the screen here, and they would be happy to help you. And I'll stay on for another 5 or 10 minutes if there are still questions out there. Thanks very much.